You know, 25 biggest monsters that ever walked the earth, but the biggest monster I ever met wasn't 30 meters tall. He was only 5 feet 9 inches and wore a tie every day. Dr. Marcus Chen's hands trembled as he held the fossil. Not because of its weight. The charred vertebra weighed only 30 pounds, but because of what those 30 pounds represented. After 847 days of digging in the Utah desert, after burning through his entire savings, after being ridiculed by every colleague in the scientific community, he finally had the proof. This can't be happening. His voice came out as a broken whisper. It was 3:47 a.m. The fluorescent light in the makeshift laboratory, a rented trailer in the middle of nowhere, flickered erratically, casting distorted shadows on the walls covered with geological maps. Marcus hadn't slept in 53 hours. His eyes were red, his stubble hid the deep circles under his eyes, and his clay-stained hands trembled as they held the piece of bone that proved the impossible. That vertebra shouldn't exist. According to all the books, all the studies, all established science, creatures of that size had never walked the earth. But there it was. Solid. Real. Terrifying. Carbon dating indicated 68 million years, exactly the late Cretaceous period. The problem. Measurements suggested that this animal was almost 45 meters long. 15 meters longer than the largest dinosaur ever recorded. Marcus placed the fossil on the metal table with reverent care, as if holding a bomb about to explode. Because that's exactly what it was. A bomb. If he was right, and every fiber of his scientific being screamed that he was, it would rewrite 200 years of paleontology. It would prove that everything we knew about the limits of gigantism was wrong. It would prove that his father was right. The memory came as it always did, quick, brutal, without asking permission. He was 14. The principal's office smelled of reheated coffee and cheap disinfectant. 3 teachers looked at him with that expression adults make when they feel sorry for a child but don't know what to say. Marcus, your father, he's not well. These theories about giant creatures, these obsessions. The principal chose her words carefully, as if walking on broken glass. We think it would be best for you to spend some time with your aunt. Just until he recovers. Recover. What a kind way of saying they thought Dr. Richard Chen was crazy. His cell phone vibrated on the pile of reports, pulling Marcus out of the past. It was Sophia, his research assistant. The message had only 3 words and 7 exclamation points. Call now. Before he could dial, the trailer door blew in. It wasn't broken down. It wasn't kicked in. It was ripped off its hinges by a man Marcus recognized immediately, even though he had never seen that face in person. Dr. Vincent Harlow, director of the National Museum of Natural History. One of the most brilliant minds in paleontology worldwide. And the man who, 22 years ago, had led the committee that destroyed Marcus's father's career. Where is it? Harlow's voice was low, controlled, dangerous. He wasn't alone. 2 security guards entered behind him, not the usual museum security guards, but men with the kind of military bearing that made it clear they weren't just there to check tickets. Marcus instinctively stepped forward, placing his body between Harlow and the table where the fossil lay. How did you find out? Ah, Marcus. Harlow smiled, but there was no warmth in that smile. It was the kind of smile predators make before they attack. Did you really think you could make a discovery of this magnitude without me knowing? I have eyes on every relevant excavation in the country. When your carbon data was processed at the Denver lab, I received an immediate alert. Marcus's world began to spin. Denver. The only lab he had entrusted with the preliminary data. That meant Sophia. The word came out like a painful realization. You paid my assistant. I hired her. Harlow corrected, taking a pair of surgical gloves out of his pocket. She's much more competent working for people who understand the real value of these things. Now, I'm going to take what's mine, and you're going to pretend none of this ever happened. Or, he paused dramatically, I can guarantee that your career will end exactly as your father's did. In the gutter. Discredited. Pathetic. Something broke inside Marcus at that moment. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was something deeper, more primal. The same thing that had broken inside his father when they proved him right, but no one wanted to believe him. It was the pain of 22 years of humiliation, of lonely Christmases, of a funeral attended by only 7 people, of a brilliant man who died being called crazy. No. The word came out firm, definitive. You're not going to touch that fossil. Harlow let out a genuine laugh, as if it were the funniest thing he'd heard in years. And how exactly are you going to stop me? Look around you, Marcus. You're alone, in a trailer in the middle of the desert, with no witnesses, no credibility. I have the most prestigious museum in the world behind me. I have lawyers. I have resources. I have. You're afraid. Marcus interrupted him, and for the first time, he saw something change in Harlow's eyes. That's why you're here at 4 a.m. with henchmen. Because if this becomes public, if the world knows that there is something out there that science cannot explain, your entire empire will collapse. How many other discoveries have you buried, Harlow? How much evidence have you destroyed to protect your theories? The silence that followed was heavy, electric, dangerous. Then Harlow made an almost imperceptible gesture with his head. The security guards advanced. Marcus didn't have time to think. His body acted on instinct, 14 years of kickboxing finally serving a purpose. He grabbed the fossil vertebra and threw himself out the side window of the trailer in a desperate dive. The glass exploded around him into millions of sparkling fragments. He rolled across the arid earth, feeling rocks tear his shirt, but not letting go of the fossil. He ran. He didn't know where. He just ran. Behind him, he heard Harlow shouting orders, car engines starting, headlights cutting through the darkness of the desert. And Marcus ran, carrying that 68-million-year-old piece of bone, proving that the greatest monsters that ever walked the earth were not only real, they were much bigger than we ever imagined. If you're holding your breath right now, waiting to find out how this chase ends, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because this story is just beginning, and what Marcus will discover about his father, about the monsters of the past, and about how far some people will go to bury the truth, will make you question everything you know about the history of our planet. The Utah desert at 4:12 a.m. is a living thing. The cold cuts through your skin like invisible blades, but Marcus barely felt it. His lungs burned, his legs begged for rest, but he kept running between the rock formations that stood like silent sentinels under the moonless sky. Behind him, 3 pairs of headlights swept the desert like prison spotlights. Distorted voices shouted coordinates into walkie-talkies. Harlow had turned this into a military manhunt. Marcus threw himself behind a sandstone formation, his chest heaving violently. His cell phone vibrated in his pocket. Unknown number. Crystal Cave. 15 minutes. Alone. The voice was female, young, urgent. Then the call dropped. Marcus knew that place. An old abandoned mine 3 kilometers away. It could be a trap. But staying there waiting for Harlow was a death sentence for his discovery. He ran. 12 minutes later, Marcus staggered into the cave. Millions of crystalline formations reflected the dim light of his cell phone flashlight, creating a private cosmos of shattered light. You came. A woman emerged from the shadows, in her early 20s, black hair tied back in a ponytail, sweatshirt with the University of Berkeley logo. I'm Alicia. I worked with Sophia. But unlike her, I don't sell my soul to psychopaths. Marcus studied her suspiciously. How did you get my number? Sophia was my roommate. I saw the messages Harlow sent her. $50,000 was how much she got to betray you. Alicia took something out of her pocket, an old, faded photograph. But I have different reasons for being here. The photo showed 2 men smiling in front of an archaeological site. Marcus recognized one of them immediately. My grandfather. Alicia added softly. Dr. Thomas Rivera. He worked with your father. Marcus's world tilted dangerously. Your grandfather. He was on the committee that destroyed my father's career. Harlow forced him. He said that if my grandfather didn't sign the report, he would make sure that no university in the country would ever hire him again. My grandfather had 3 young children. Tears began to stream down her face. He never forgave himself. He spent the last 15 years trying to prove his father right. And when he finally found something, he died. How? Heart attack. At 54. 3 days after confronting Harlow with evidence about giant bones in Wyoming. Alicia wiped her tears away angrily. The police called it a natural death. I call it very convenient. Marcus looked at the fossil in his hands, that piece of bone that had already cost so many lives, so many careers. Harlow isn't doing this for science. Marcus spoke softly. This is about power. $200 million in government contracts. Alicia confirmed. For the past 10 years, Harlow has had exclusive contracts with the Department of Defense to study biomechanical applications of fossil structures. He has patented models based on dinosaur skeletons for military technology. If new data emerges, all of these contracts are invalidated. Bile rose in Marcus's throat. So my father was destroyed because of a military contract? Your father discovered something that the most powerful man in paleontology couldn't allow to be revealed. Alicia approached him. Marcus, Harlow has buried at least 6 other discoveries in the last 20 years. If he gets this fossil, your father's memory will remain tarnished forever. So what do I do? You do what your father and my grandfather could never do. Alicia placed a backpack at his feet. You make this public before Harlow can bury it. Document everything, film everything, and put it online. It doesn't matter if they believe it or not. What matters is that millions of people will see it before he can delete it. Marcus opened the backpack. In addition to the electronic equipment, there was something that made his heart ache, his father's field notebook. The yellowed pages, the shaky but determined handwriting, the meticulous drawings of skeletons that shouldn't exist. How did you get this? My grandfather kept it. He knew that one day someone would need the truth. Voices outside the cave interrupted them. Headlights illuminated the entrance. I know you're in there, Marcus. Harlow's voice echoed off the crystal walls. You have 10 seconds to come out before my men come in. Alicia pointed to a narrow crevice at the back of the cave. That passage leads to a system of ancient tunnels. 3 kilometers north there's a jeep hidden. Keys are in the backpack. And you? I'll buy you time. Say you left through the main entrance. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Go. What about Marcus? Don't let their deaths be in vain. Marcus clutched the fossil to his chest and squeezed through the crack. The last thing he saw was Alicia walking toward the cave entrance, shoulders squared, ready to lie to the devil. And as he crawled through the dark tunnels, Marcus wondered how many others had sacrificed everything to protect truths the world wasn't ready to accept. The darkness of the tunnels was absolute. Marcus crawled using only his sense of touch, the fossil strapped to his back with a belt, his backpack dragging against the rocks. Each breath echoed off the narrow walls like a secret shared with ghosts. He didn't know if he was moving forward or just burying himself deeper in the bowels of the earth. Then he saw it, a tiny point of gray light at the end of the tunnel. Dawn. Marcus emerged in a hidden ravine exactly where Alicia had said. The jeep was there, covered by a camouflaged tarp, the keys stuck under the sun visor. He threw his backpack on the passenger seat and started the engine, his hands still shaking from adrenaline. But he didn't accelerate immediately. Something made him pause. His father's notebook. With hesitant fingers, Marcus took the worn notebook from his backpack. The cracked leather cover had stains that looked like coffee or tears. He opened it to the first page, and the air left his lungs like a punch to the stomach. To my son Marcus, if you are reading this, it means I didn't have the courage to tell you in person. It means that fear won out once again. Forgive me. The letters danced before his eyes, blurred by tears Marcus didn't realize were falling. He turned the page. What came next was a map. Not an ordinary map, but a meticulous record of 47 archaeological sites scattered across 7 states. Each location marked with precise coordinates, dates, and a single word written in red beside it. Buried. 47 discoveries. 47 pieces of evidence of creatures that defied everything established science accepted. And next to each mark, a name. Always the same name. Vincent Harlow. My God. Marcus whispered into the void. You knew. You always knew. He kept reading, each page a more devastating revelation than the last. His father didn't just have theories, he had evidence. Photographs of impossible fossils, chemical analyses that proved controversial dating, testimonies from other paleontologists who had seen and then been silenced. But it was on page 34 that Marcus found what changed everything. A list of names. 15 people. Next to each name, 2 dates. The first, the date they made significant discoveries. The second, the date they died. Dr. Thomas Rivera, discovery, March 15, 2019. Death, March 22, 2019. Heart attack. Dr. Sarah Chen, discovery, November 8, 2018. Death, November 14, 2018. Car accident. Dr. Michael Foster, discovery, July 2, 2017. Death, July 9, 2017. Suicide. The list went on. 15 scientists. All dead within 2 weeks of making discoveries that contradicted Harlow's narrative. All officially listed as accidental or natural deaths. And at the bottom of the list, written in shaky handwriting that Marcus would recognize anywhere. I'm next. But at least this time, I've left the truth written down. Marcus, don't make my mistake. Don't try to face him alone. Don't try to be a hero. Just make it public. Make noise. Make so much noise that they can't silence you without revealing exactly what they're hiding. I love you, my son. I always have. Even when I couldn't say it. Marcus slammed the notebook shut, tears now falling freely. 22 years. 22 years believing his father was just an obsessed man, broken by academic pressure. 22 years carrying the guilt of not believing him when he needed it most. And all because Harlow had built an empire on corpses and lies. The cell phone in his backpack, a prepaid device Alicia had included, vibrated. Message from an unknown number. We found the girl. She hasn't said anything yet, but she will. You have 6 hours to deliver the fossil to the museum, or she disappears. Don't involve the police. Don't test my patience. H. Marcus felt anger burning in his veins like acid. Harlow had Alicia, a 23-year-old girl who was just trying to do the right thing, and now she was paying for it. Just like her grandfather had paid. Just like her father had paid. Make noise. His father's words echoed in his mind. Marcus turned on his laptop, connected to the internet via his cell phone hotspot, and began to do just that. He set up simultaneous accounts on 7 different platforms, each with a different username, each hosted through proxy servers he had learned to use in his college days when he needed to access restricted papers. Then he started filming. My name is Dr. Marcus Chen. I am a paleontologist. And in the next few minutes, I am going to show you something that mainstream science has tried to bury for over 20 years. He positioned the fossil in front of the camera, the carbon dating numbers clearly visible. This fossil is 68 million years old. And it belongs to a creature that shouldn't exist. He continued, showing page after page from his father's notebook. The maps. The coordinates. The list of dead scientists. Every piece of evidence meticulously documented. Dr. Vincent Harlow, director of the National Museum of Natural History, has been systematically destroying evidence and silencing researchers for 2 decades. And he did this not for science, but for $200 million in military contracts that depend on keeping the official narrative intact. Marcus let that sink in for a moment, then continued in a lower, more personal voice. My father, Dr. Richard Chin, died alone and discredited because he tried to expose this. He died believing the world thought he was crazy. But he wasn't. He was right. And today, I'm going to prove it. He set the upload to begin simultaneously on all platforms at 12 p.m., peak time on the East Coast. 6 hours. Enough time to do one more thing. Marcus opened a digital map and marked a specific point, coordinates his father had highlighted in red in the notebook. Site 47. The last one on the list. Location, 180 kilometers north, in a remote area of Montana that was technically federal property. His father's note beside it read, "The biggest one of all. If you can prove just one, let it be this one." Marcus looked at his phone. 5 hours and 40 minutes until the upload. 3.5 hours to Montana. Enough time to gather more evidence. Enough time to ensure that when Harlow came after him, and he would, Marcus would have more than enough ammunition to be silenced. He accelerated the jeep, desert dust rising behind him like a golden curtain under the rising sun. In the rearview mirror, he saw a helicopter appear on the horizon. Harlow was no longer playing games. But neither was Marcus. Because he finally understood something his father had tried to teach him all these years. The greatest monsters that ever walked the earth weren't 45-meter dinosaurs. They were ordinary men willing to destroy lives to protect secrets. And the only way to defeat monsters like that wasn't by fighting in the dark. It was by turning on so many lights that there were no more places for them to hide. The speedometer read 140 kilometers per hour. The helicopter was closing in. And Marcus drove toward the one place that could change everything. Site 47 was not what Marcus expected. He had imagined an abandoned excavation, perhaps some markings on the ground, the remains of rusted equipment. Instead, he found an active operation. Military tents. Roaring diesel generators. Men in uniforms without insignia patrolling with rifles that were definitely not meant to scare away curious onlookers. And at the center of it all, a containment structure the size of an airplane hangar. Marcus parked the jeep behind a rocky outcrop, took the portable camera from his backpack, and started filming. His hands were shaking, but not from fear. From pure adrenaline. Because he knew in his gut, that what was inside that structure was the evidence that would change everything. He waited until the shift change. 3 minutes of confusion as the night guards left and the day guards arrived. 3 minutes to infiltrate. Marcus ran crouched between the tents, his heart pounding in his chest. He reached the side of the containment structure and found a service door that was poorly locked. Just a chain with a padlock. He used a rock to break it, the metallic sound echoing louder than it should have. No one came to investigate. He went inside. The interior structure was lit by industrial floodlights positioned at specific angles. And in the center, partially excavated from the bedrock, was the most magnificent skeleton Marcus had ever seen. It wasn't a dinosaur. Not completely. It was something in between, a transitional creature that modern science swore was impossible. The skull alone was nearly 8 meters long. The vertebrae stretched in an elegant, deadly curve for at least 50 meters. And the legs. My God, the legs were structured in a way that defied everything Marcus had ever learned about biomechanics. It shouldn't have been able to walk. It shouldn't have been able to exist. But it did. Impressive, isn't it? Harlow's voice came from behind him, calm, almost paternal. Your father saw it too, you know. 23 years ago. It was his last dig before I made sure no one took him seriously anymore. Marcus turned slowly, the camera still recording, hidden in his jacket pocket. Harlow stood alone, his hands in the pockets of his immaculate blazer, completely out of place in this environment of dirt and ancient bones. You brought him here. Marcus said, the realization hitting him like a train. You brought him here on purpose to see this. To break him. To show him what happens to people who don't understand the game. Harlow corrected, circling Marcus like a shark. Your father was brilliant, Marcus. Genuinely brilliant. But he had one fatal flaw, he believed that truth mattered more than power. And you know what men like that get? They die poor, alone and forgotten. 15 people. Marcus spat out the words. 15 scientists killed because they saw something you couldn't let exist. 17, actually. Harlow smiled, and there was something genuinely monstrous about that smile. You're counting wrong. But who cares about numbers when we're talking about progress? What do you think this discovery here is for, Marcus? Textbooks? For museums? No. This, he pointed to the colossal skeleton, is worth billions in military technology. This creature's bone structure supports impossible weight through fractal geometry that no human engineer has ever been able to replicate. Do you have any idea what that means for building armored vehicles? For combat exoskeletons? You've turned science into a weapon. I turned old bones into the future, Harlow retorted. And you know why I'll keep winning? Because men like you and your father get stuck in childish idealism about truth and knowledge, while I understand that the world is driven by two things, money and fear. And I have both. Marcus felt something shift inside him. A cold, crystalline clarity. You're right about one thing. My father was an idealist. He believed that people were fundamentally good. That truth would eventually prevail. He took a step toward Harlow. But I'm not my father. Harlow frowned, the first crack in his armor of confidence. What did you do? Make noise, you said. Marcus took his phone out of his pocket, the screen showing 7 simultaneous upload windows. So I made noise. 14 minutes ago, 47 pages from my father's notebook were published on 7 different platforms. Coordinates of all the sites you buried. Photos of the fossils. The list of dead scientists. Everything. The blood drained from Harlow's face. You wouldn't be that stupid. And there's more. Marcus continued, his voice gaining strength. Each upload has a code that links it directly to your military contracts, including the one from 2019 that, coincidentally, was signed 3 days after Dr. Rivera's death, including the payments your shell company in Switzerland made to offshore accounts belonging to the investigators who declared all those deaths accidental. That doesn't prove anything. Harlow shouted, his composure finally breaking. These are conspiracy theories. No one will believe. 23 million people have already seen it. Marcus showed him his phone. The view counts rising exponentially, the comments multiplying faster than he could read them. And in 40 minutes, CNN, BBC, and Associated Press will receive automated emails with all the evidence. You can't bury this. You can't buy everyone. You can't silence the whole world. Harlow froze. Marcus saw the exact moment when realization hit him, his 30-year empire crumbling in real time. Then something changed in his eyes. Something desperate and dangerous. Alicia, Harlow said softly. The girl is still with my men. One word from me, and they'll arrest her right where she is. In a federal office under protective custody. A new voice echoed through the structure. Marcus turned and saw Alicia walk through the front door, accompanied by 2 agents wearing FBI vests. Surprise. Marcus's world tilted. You work for the FBI? I work with the FBI. Alicia corrected. For 18 months. Since we obtained sufficient evidence that my grandfather did not die of natural causes. Marcus, I'm sorry I didn't tell you, but we needed Harlow to feel confident enough to make a mistake. And he did. Threatening the life of a federal witness via traceable text message was particularly stupid. This is absurd. Harlow backed away. I have lawyers, I have connections in the Department of Defense, I have had. The FBI agent approached, handcuffs in hand. Dr. Vincent Harlow, you are under arrest for obstruction of justice, destruction of federal evidence, conspiracy to commit murder, and about 47 other charges that will take an hour just to read. You have the right to remain silent. Marcus didn't hear the rest. He just watched as they led Harlow away in handcuffs, the man who had destroyed his father now reduced to a pathetic figure screaming about diplomatic immunity that didn't exist. Your father would be proud. Alicia said softly, appearing at his side. He spent years trying to build a case against Harlow. But he tried to do it alone. You understood what he couldn't, that some battles need to be fought in the light of day. Marcus looked up at the gigantic skeleton above them. 50 meters of bone and mystery. Proof that the world was much bigger, much stranger, much more magnificent than any powerful person could control. How long until this becomes public? He asked. The skeleton? 6 months until we complete the excavation. But the truth? Alicia smiled. It's already out there. You made sure of that. Marcus picked up the fossil he had carried throughout that impossible journey, the vertebra that had cost him so much. He held it up to the morning light streaming through the windows of the structure, seeing the patterns on its surface, the 68 million years of history preserved in every crack. And for the first time in 22 years, Marcus felt something he had forgotten what it was like. 3 months later, Marcus was on stage at the National Science Auditorium in Washington, D.C., looking out at an audience of 2,400 people. Behind him, projected on a 15-meter screen, was the complete digital reconstruction of the Site-47 skeleton. The creature that the media had already dubbed the Chen Titan, in honor of the man who first discovered it 23 years ago. His father. For decades, we were told that we knew the limits of gigantism on Earth. Marcus began, his voice steady but charged with emotion. We were told that creatures beyond certain sizes simply could not exist due to physical and biological constraints. But the truth is, we didn't know. We chose not to know. Because admitting we were wrong meant admitting that perhaps we didn't control knowledge as much as we would like. He paused, letting it sink in. The Chen Titan was 52 meters long and weighed approximately 110 tons. To put that in perspective, it was 15 meters larger than any previously recorded dinosaur. And it wasn't the only buried discovery. Over the past 3 months, independent teams have confirmed 31 of the 47 sites documented by my father. 31 skeletons that rewrite everything we thought we knew about prehistoric life. The audience was completely silent. Marcus could see journalists frantically taking notes, scientists with expressions ranging from fascination to disbelief, students with wide eyes. But this story isn't about dinosaurs. Marcus continued, his voice becoming more personal. It's about the monsters that really matter. Because the biggest monster I ever faced wasn't 50 meters long. It had power, influence, and the ability to make truths disappear. Dr. Vincent Harlow built an empire on silence. He turned knowledge into a commodity, and people into disposable obstacles. He let the anger show in his voice, controlled but real. 17 scientists died defending the truth. 17 people who saw something extraordinary and refused to let it be buried. My father was one of them. And for 22 years, I believed he had wasted his life chasing ghosts. I was wrong. He wasn't chasing ghosts. He was fighting real monsters. Marcus took a deep breath. The next part was the hardest. Harlow was sentenced yesterday to 34 years in federal prison. His military contracts have been cancelled. His museum is under new management. And every scientist he silenced is being publicly recognized and honored. But you know what no sentence can give back? Time. I lost 22 years with my father because I was ashamed to believe him. Because the world told me he was crazy, and I believed the world instead of believing the man who raised me. His voice broke a little. He didn't try to hide it. So this lecture isn't just about paleontology or justice. It's about a question we all need to ask ourselves. When was the last time you believed in someone despite what everyone else said? When was the last time you defended a truth that was inconvenient, unpopular, or too expensive? Marcus gestured to the image of Chen's Titan behind him. This animal lived 68 million years ago. It was real, magnificent, and impossible according to all the laws we thought we knew. And it was hidden for 23 years because one man decided his power was more important than the truth. But do you know what's even more impressive than a 52-meter dinosaur? He paused, making eye contact with the audience. The ordinary people who risked everything to ensure that this truth did not die. Alicia Rivera, who honored her grandfather's memory by becoming a federal agent at age 22. The 15 anonymous scientists who continued to document evidence even though they knew it could cost them their lives. And my father, Dr. Richard Chen, who died alone but not defeated, because he left a map so others could finish what he started. Marcus felt the tears coming, but he didn't hold them back. To hell with professional composure. This was bigger than that. The greatest monsters that ever walked the earth are not extinct. They wear suits. They sit on boards of directors. They turn knowledge into weapons and silence into strategy. But do you know what is greater than any monster? The truth refusing to stay buried. The courage of ordinary people saying, "No more." The legacy of those who plant trees knowing they will never sit in their shade. He held the fossil, that single vertebra he had carried through the desert, through fear, through everything. This piece of bone weighs 30 pounds. But it carries the weight of 23 years of struggle, of 17 lives lost, of countless truths buried. And now it is here, in the light of day, where it always should have been. Not because I am special. Not because I am a hero. But because I finally learned what my father tried to teach me my whole life, that the truth does not need permission to exist. It just needs people brave enough not to let it be silenced. The audience erupted in applause. Marcus saw people standing up, saw scientists with tears on their faces, saw his father's photo projected on the screen. Young, smiling, holding a fossil with the kind of pure joy that only comes from discovering something truly wonderful. After the lecture, a woman in her early 60s approached him. She had gray hair and kind eyes that seemed to have seen a lot of pain. "My husband was on your father's list," she said softly. "Dr. Michael Foster. They said it was suicide, but I always knew it wasn't. He was so excited about his discovery. And then he was gone." Tears streamed down her face. "Thank you for proving I wasn't crazy. Thank you for making my husband remembered as the brilliant scientist he was, not the false narrative they created." Marcus hugged her as she cried. And in that moment, he understood that the journey had never been about dinosaurs or fossils. It had been about dignity. About memory. About ensuring that people who sacrificed everything for the truth were not forgotten as inconvenient footnotes in someone else's story. That night, alone in the hotel, Marcus opened his father's notebook for the last time. On the back cover, there was one last note he hadn't seen before. The handwriting was shaky, clearly written in haste. "Marcus, if you found this, it means you are braver than I ever was. The monsters of the past were giants, but at least they were honest in their nature. The monsters of the present hide behind credentials and power. Be the light that forces them out of the shadows. I love you. Always. Dad." Marcus closed the notebook and looked out the window at the illuminated city. Somewhere out there were other truths waiting to be discovered. Other monsters waiting to be exposed. Other people needing the courage to believe that a lone voice crying out in the wilderness could eventually become a chorus impossible to ignore. And for the first time in his life, Marcus Chen was not afraid of the dark. Because he finally understood, the greatest monsters that ever walked the earth were real. Some were 50 meters tall and 8 other giants. But the most dangerous were human-sized and 8 dreams, truths, and entire lives. The difference. Prehistoric monsters are extinct. The others still walk among us. But now, at least, we know they can bleed. If this story made you think differently about truth, power, and what it really means to be brave, subscribe to the channel. Because the world is full of stories that need to be told. And some truths are too big to remain buried.